parliamentary law making that we really talk about is actually very time consuming. Let's look at the facts here. It took 18 years for that legislation on child sexual abuse to be adopted. Also, the legislation on prevention of sexual harassment at workplace took 15 long years. And can India wait for that long for such an important law to be made?
See, we have waited almost 65 years now for this law to be made. So time frame is not important. And as Ashok rightly said, there is a consensus amongst all the parties as far as this law is concerned, as no one is going to oppose to this law in the floor of the parliament. So that Mr. Verma, the Justice Verma Commission has come up with the recommendations. The amendments would have easily been made in the parliament. But having said this, I would like to attach the caveat that we do not oppose any law which looks after in curbing the violence against the woman.
All right. So, I would like to contradict you here. This is a question to Dr. Patra. Dr. Patra, now let's look at the constitution. Now it says the ideally ordinance should be brought only in an emergency situation that books no delay. Now the question is this not an emergency situation in which an ordinance should have been brought about?
See, Aishwarya, I believe the emergency situation was immediately post December 16. The government should have really emerged then. But the Prime Minister was really late, 20 days in addressing the people when there was outcry in the streets. And as I say, well, this is an emergency situation, laws have to be made, but let me attach something very important. This law is not going to retrospectively help the Nirbhaya case or the Damini case in any way, because the law did not exist when the whole thing happened. So retrospectively, it is not going to determine the time frame of the Nirbhaya case. It is not going to help out the victim Nirbhaya in any way retrospectively.
All right, it might not help the Damini case, but let's look at it this way, that there may be so many Damini cases in the making, isn't it, Dr. Patra?
But yes, very right. I mean, no Damini should ever appear in the scene of Indian democracy hereafter. But this urgency somehow makes us believe that it is because we want to mete out justice to Damini that we are being urgent. But will it really help Damini is the question. Well, there is no problem in coming up with an ordinance, but the government could have easily waited for the parliament session where a bipartisan sanction and greater deliberations could have made a tougher law.
All right. But Dr. Patra, do you think that the ordinance has been really able to imbibe the spirit of the Verma committee? Because Justice Verma had not only spoken about the laws, he had talked about, the committee had talked about a wide range of issues, which of course also like the social issues. It had also talked about the patriarchal society that we live in. Do you think it has been able to imbibe that sort of spirit with which the recommendations really that were brought about?
See, Aishwarya, before I answer this question of yours, I want to make two quick points. First, we have seen in the recent past, in fact today itself we are seeing the government is entering into a game where the property of the parliament is fast being referred to the cabinet. We have seen the same instance in Lokpal bill also. The Lokpal bill, being the property of the parliament, has now been brought to the cabinet and the cabinet has taken the call. Similarly, even this case, the ordinance in fact was not required. I believe it was the property of the parliament and greater deliberations were required, but it has been shifted to the cabinet. Well, it's good if good laws are made, stringent laws are made, but the issue is why the property of parliaments has been shifted. If you see the urgency, the sense of urgency, it is not that the Congress government or the UPA government was showing urgency. In fact, Sushma Swaraj had called for a parliamentary deliberation, a special session immediately post December 16, to which the government had not agreed. If the urgency was required, the urgency was required then, because that was the time when people were out in the street. That was the time when people really wanted to listen to what the Prime Minister of the country had to say. But having said this, now coming to your question, that whether the government has inculcated most of what was said by the Justice Verma Commission, I say yes, most of the things have been inculcated. Rather ironically, Justice Verma Commission had not recommended the death penalty, which the government had to inculcate because BJP and other parties have been really voicing for it. The public has been voicing for it. Bearing a few exceptions, for instance, the marital rape case has not been inculcated and the AFSA cases has not been inculcated. Most of the other things have been brought into. But greater deliberation Constitution would have made it tougher, and as you said, the Khaf Panchayat issues, the patriarchal society issues, the social changes, they could also have been inculcated only when greater deliberations in the Parliament take place, which has to take place within 6 months.
All right. But this is very important, Dr. Patra. I'd like to ask you that this ordinance obviously will come into effect as soon as the President of the country will sign it. But of course, it will, as Dr. Pankaj pointed out, the Parliament has to pass it within 6 months. Under these circumstances, what is going to be the take of the BJP, your party, on this of course ordinance?
See, there has been a consensus amongst all the parties that laws, stringent laws are required to curb the violence against women, and no party is going to accept the kind of violence that we have seen December 16 or kind of violence that are percolating in the women community. So naturally we are not going to oppose anything, we are rather going to help them out in making a stringent law.
All right, this is the point, of course, that we are discussing here. We were joined in by Dr. Pankaj and also Dr. Patra for the entire for a perspective on the entire story. Thank you, sir, both of you, for joining us.